exponent of reality is adaptable to all situations, because truth is found adopting itself on all levels of life all the time. There is that absolute level of truth applicable to the transcendental area, unboundedness. There are so many relative levels of truth. Truth. This red is the truth of the rose, and this hardness and this pale green is the truth of the stem, this flatness, this size, this long, this width, this thin. This is the truth of the leaf. Different truths in the relative, and one truth, ultimate one truth at the transcendental level, at the basis of all relative truths. These are the different phases of the truth. The ultimate aspect of truth, absolute, non-changing, non-variable, unbounded, and variable, changing phases of relative truths. Life is a composition of truths, varying values, absolute one, and many relative. And in this, truth is adapting itself to various circumstances. Sap is adapting itself to the need of the leaf, stem, thorn, petal, red, flat, good smell, all different avenues of expressions are being adopted by the same truth, same sap, adopting itself in different values, expressing itself in different forms and phenomenon in different levels of relative life, and yet remaining the same all the time, absolute. What we find here is enormous adaptability of truth. The truth is adaptable. It adopts itself. Absolute truth adopts itself in various forms and phenomena. This infinite adaptability of the ultimate reality is of value to us in life. And this was the most remarkable feature of Gurudev. The feature of the truth, it just adopts itself in all circumstances, in all phases. Even ignorant people like me were blessed, and this was his great extreme value of adaptability. He could adapt himself to even such sheer ignorance and raise the value. This adaptability is what I found most useful for me as far as Gurudev is concerned. It's a very great fortune to have found him, and from the time I had a glimpse of him. It was a flashy glimpse of light. I was fond of visiting saints, and when I heard there was a saint, this was in some summer vacation, some saint has come, but it's very difficult to approach him, and he's far away, and all that. Then I made more inquiries, where is he and what. Then I found one can only see him about midnight or something, because no one is allowed to go there, and you have to go in all darkness without making noise and all kinds of things. I made some friends here and there, and just we went there, and on a small house somewhere far in the forest somewhere, there was a terrace, small terrace, and there it was all dark, absolutely dark. About 10 or 11 we arrived there, I and some one or two more. And there was a brahmachari on the ground floor. He said, "How you are here, and who told you, and you are not expected to come?" And he said, "So maybe we forgot our way and we are here, and tell us something like that." And tell us about this saint, and we want to hear. And he said, "Don't talk, don't talk, just sit quiet here." And he disappeared. He went up, and after about half an hour he came back. He said, "Follow me very quietly." He said, all right. We quietly went up. There was nothing to see, it's all dark, and somehow we felt someone was sitting on a sort of chair or something, reclining, comfortable. We sat down quietly. We found 2-3 other men were also sitting. No one was talking, whispering. It's all dark, everything. It so happened, about maybe 15-20 minutes passed, and it happened that far distance a car was coming, and it showed the light on the terrace, and that was the first sight of Gurudev. Just on the flash of the car, maybe a mile away from the car, but it just turned for a moment, and it was just enough to have a glimpse of him. And then I thought, yes, it seems the time has come. That one glimpse of a flashy light, and that was enough to take decisions. Then I came, and I said, could I not be at your service? I said, what are you doing? Some studying. Better finish your studies, and then where you will be, you will find me somewhere. All right. I could hardly finish my things. By that time, it was heard that he has become the Shankaracharya of Jyotirmat. To become a Shankaracharya is a democratic thing. All the Pandits and saints and all that, they join together and they elect the Shankaracharya, the head of the custodian of Hindu religion. And the seat was in the north, in the Himalayas, deep in the Himalayas, about 160 miles from Rishikesh, from our academy. And 160 miles in the Himalayas means about 20 hours of driving. Takes full 2 days to drive. When he became Shankaracharya, he was easily accessible. And then I joined him. And I remember it took me about 2.5 years to really adjust myself. Right from the beginning, the whole purpose was to just breathe in his breath. This was my ideal. The whole purpose was to tune myself with Gurudev, and that was all that I wanted to do. And fortunately it struck that the only way to do this is to adjust my feelings with his feelings. How he thinks, what he wants me to do, this or this or this, or he doesn't want me to do anything, but I want to move with his feelings. Whichever way he sees, I want to see that way. Whichever way he wants to think, whatever, I want to think the same way. And it took about 2.5 years, and I thought 2.5 years were wasted. But it came out to be quite early to adjust myself with his feelings. And the method that I adopted was just to sense what he wants at what time. What he wants. I picked up activity as a means to adjust to his thought, to his feelings. Something I would do, and that action was not so important for me. The main thing was to see which way he wants me to go on that action. And whichever way I felt I was going this way, maybe I took something to do and I was halfway, and I was closely all the time watching which way he wants me to go, and I found he wants me to take a turn that way. I would immediately take a turn that way. It was in the deep functioning of my heart and mind, feeling and understanding, to just go the direction he wants me to go, this way or that way or that way or that way. Very precious activities sometimes I had to completely abandon because I thought his mind was going that way, and I adjusted myself to that and that and that and that. There were quite a periods of test, but somehow it happened that I just came through them all. Action I took as a means of communicating to him in order to be able to adjust to his thought, this way, in very little trifling things, this way, this way, this way. So all the time adjusting to his feelings, thinking. About 2.5 years, I started to feel that I am making less mistakes now, because all that period of adjustment and readjustment and all the time, this was the impulse of my life. On this I was living, moving, breathing, eating, talking, all the time. Every thought was in this direction. Which way he wants, which way he lives, what he likes. That was my direction, that was my thing. Activity. I had to create an action to see his reaction and then follow his reaction. And when that was done, fine, I had to create. Hardly he would ever have asked me to do anything. And when I found it, right in the beginning, I joined the ashram, I came, and then I was amongst many, maybe 30, 40 brahmacharis and pandits and all that. And they were very wise people, all pandits of all the 6 systems of philosophy and pandits of all the smritis, shrutis and all that. The whole learning round about Shankaracharya, the vast retinue of learned people, and I was absolutely insignificant. I had some knowledge of Hindi and some of English and little bit of Sanskrit, but in that big, huge, learned assembly, this was absolutely insignificant. And English, of course, it was not necessary at all. And then it was about a week, and as everyone in the morning would go and do the prostrations and come out, and then there was nothing to do. And 1 week passed, and then I thought it's ridiculous to waste all this time. It was just once in the morning and once in the evening go and prostrate and come out. So I met friend with a man who was cleaning his room, something like that, adjusting his table, this. I said, could you not take rest? You must be feeling very tired and something. And I said I could. But he said, you can't come in this room and this. But I said, maybe when Gurudev is not here, when he's taking his bath, and I could clean and something. He said, yes, that time you can come, but get out quickly and don't disturb things like that. So I started on that, and some cleaning of the floor, something, some adjusting something. It so happened that must have been very good time of my life. The Pandit, the wise man who was doing all correspondence, he had to go home for something. So he went there, and there was no one. So the letters were coming, and then I was bringing them, because nobody told me to do it, but I knew that that Pandit had gone, and sometimes he would allow me to read out the letters to him. One letter was there. It came for his blessing from some state in India, asking that they are going to perform a big yajna, and they want the blessings of Shankaracharya. And that letter was there, and that date was approaching. About a week was left. And that I thought was a letter very responsible for the organization to answer. And I asked Gurudev the answer of this letter, and he would just not mind it, because in his eyes just one organization doesn't mean anything. But I thought it's a very great responsibility of the organization if someone wants Shankaracharya's blessing, then it's for the organization to reply his blessings and create a goodwill and inspire that organization. So 2-3 more days gone, and 2-3 times quietly I remembered but didn't get reply. One day I said, it's only about 4-5 days left. Shall I make a draft and read to Gurudev? And he said, what you will write? And there was the end. I took some little bit more bold step. I said, now that was the time for him to rest after lunch, and I closed the door and came out. Coming out, I said, I'll write a few lines and show to Gurudev in the evening. He would never reply. I closed the door and came out. I came out in my room and I said, now come on, I have to write an answer to this. How to write, what to do. Now supposing if I was a Shankaracharya, what I will say in that letter. And I just imposed Shankaracharyaship on myself. And I said, yes, all the religious organizations look to Shankaracharya, head of the religion. The main thing is that they should get inspiration from the blessing of Shankaracharya as an organization doing this great yajna, inspiring the people in the locality for religious life. So they should have the approval of Shankaracharya for this good act of religious value. I somehow wrote. And in the evening, it was just a very short thing, because nothing very long has to go from Shankaracharya, is a great authority on religion. So very short inspiration. I made some few lines. In the evening, when I opened the door and I read out that thing in one simple breath quickly, and it sounded so apt, so appropriate. And then he said, will these people get it if you write and send it? I said, yes, they can get it. It's yet 4 days. And that's all that he said. Then I quickly wrote and put a seal of Shankaracharya and did the whole paraphernalia and sent it. From that day, probably I gave an impression that I could write something useful. That was the first thing. And from there, the letters came to me for replying, and I was replying, and sometimes reading to him. And this was a means for me to look to his thoughts and look to this thing, and keep on adjusting my flow this way. And it took just about 2.5 years for my thoughts to be mainly flowing in his. How much perfectly I couldn't, there was nothing to measure, but I knew I was making very, very rare mistakes, no mistakes almost. And from there on, for me the whole thing was a very light and beautiful, and no obstacles, nothing, clear, everything. Then I was living around him without even feeling that I was living. It's a very genuine feeling of complete oneness with Gurudev, just like that. People who have seen me moving with Gurudev know that I was not as if in this isolated, singled body or something. There was something of a universal value. And what I did from my side was just on that first glimpse of the flashy light on him, the life was surrendered. And then there was a time, then it naturally came about that then I was not required to ask him. I would just write letters and then receive letters and together to listen to his evening discourses. He wouldn't give long speeches. 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 25 minutes was the maximum that he would have ever spoken. And people would stand for miles together. Loudspeakers had to run for long, long distances. And the story was that when people didn't know, they were just passing by in a car, and then just one word of his speech heard, and the man would stop and listen who is speaking. And he would just be stuck on that speech till the whole crowd stood up to go. Such was the magnetism of every word that came out of his lips. It was pure wisdom. In our traditional chanting, there is an expression, Kevalam Jnanamurtim, the embodiment of knowledge alone. This was exemplified in his personality. The expression of knowledge alone, that abstract fullness of the ultimate knowledge, he was the expression of that. Words enormously powerful, just like magnets. And the value of a magnet is making an iron filing a magnet and drawing him right away, straight away. Such purifying influence. And this was from a personality which was cultured and enriched in the value of silence from the age of 11 till 71. In deep forests and hidden caves where it's difficult for any human being to approach, years have been spent on such deep silences, as if nature was culturing a personality in silence which was to inspire life and religious values, human values, divine values in the world for all times to come. This is the basis of our movement, such a life. And that is the reason why the basic value of our message is in a deep silence. In a deep silence of being. We call it restful alertness. The whole philosophy, the whole message is to inspire the people to find this deep inner silence, which was at the basis of the personality of Gurudev. His whole life was as if structured in the value of that silence. That's why such a powerful magnetism in his personality, in his speech, in his teachings. The reality of knowledge was speaking, radiating from him, was speaking in him, was radiating from him. Just pure embodiment of knowledge. More and more one realizes as one grows in the value of life, more and more. See, the whole focus point of what we have learnt from him is life is naturally full. That fullness of life is the natural state of life. And if someone is not living that spontaneously, there is a way to do it, and that way also is most natural, most suitable to the very nature of life. Life is naturally full. And this is the message that the silence around him whispered to all the ears and inspired all the hearts and minds that gathered around him. Life is naturally full. This is the whole crest of our message. The whole movement is structured to whisper just this one single expression. Life is full. It's bliss. One is born to enjoy. Everyone should live this full life. If one is not spontaneously living it, come on, here is a way. And now, the whole teaching is springing up in the expression of our age, scientific age, science of creative intelligence. That fullness of life, which is deep silence within, is the center of creative intelligence. And a systematic study of that is enough to make a man full man. So, life is naturally full. Science of creative intelligence is coming up to reveal all the people. Life is full. There is no need to suffer. And all the implications and consequences of this message in all the different areas of life, individual and society, they are all just the as if the rays of this sun. Life is naturally full, and this one saw on his person, this one heard in his voice. Life is naturally full. Today, which is the day of full moon, beautiful. The same fullness of life on the moon, when we find this is the day for Gurudev's memory, this is the day for enlivening his message, this is the day for enlivening our state of life, one with him. This is the importance of this day, and we had been fortunate to have such a master who was full like the full moon of today. We'll make our offerings at his feet today, very special, and we'll rejoice in our feelings for him, and because this is the core of our teaching. We want his teachings to be heard and followed and enjoyed generation after generation, because it is in this teaching that the well-being of all mankind rests. The history of mankind is nothing new to us. In our own time we are aware of how much negativity life contains. We stand in the memory of Gurudev in his words to say life is naturally full. Come on, have this technique and have it in the purity as he gave it to us. The purity of the teaching, this memory of Gurudev, this 2-minute performance of our heart flowing on to him by way of making some offerings. It's symbolic. It's a symbolic of that great value which will maintain the teaching pure generation after generation. Just as we say Newton's law of motion. It would have been enough to say law of motion, but then there could be many laws of motion. And when the initiator's name is attached with it, Newton's law of motion, one understands. The name attached to the principle keeps the principle pure, saves it from being polluted by many other things. This is the value of the name. This 2-minute ceremony attached to the teaching will keep the teaching pure in its value. Every teacher feels as if a mouthpiece. He represents a tradition, wants to teach in the value he has received the teaching, because the process being natural, it's so delicate, it could be spoiled by the slightest modification in anything. And that is why before we teach, we hold ourselves fully in tune with his spirit. Spirit doesn't mean spirit with all that he is, the embodiment of full life. And then we place ourselves in that capacity, start teaching the man. Every word that goes out of our lips at the time of initiation has a magic influence. And that is why we don't speak very much, a few words. And that takes care of the whole start of the teaching, right start. So all our teaching is centered in that style which will keep it pure. And by keeping it pure, it will remain effective. Effective. We want to reap the advantage of effectiveness of TM. And that will automatically be by keeping the teaching pure. When we know the tradition, great many things are there to be learned and to be told and to be incorporated in our practice. But this day of full moon and attributed to Gurudev gives us the message that life is naturally full. And on that level, we start to expound the reality. Even when we expound the realities of relative life, we expound on that level of the immovable absolute, on that level of fullness. All the relative realities gain enrichment and eventually fulfillment, fullness. So when we want to become, we are aspiring to be now the exponents of reality, just this one simple formula comes to us on this day of full moon, that our basis of our message is the personality of Gurudev and the personality of the moon, which is full today. So it's a message of today. It's not a message of so many years past. It's a message of today. And year after year, this full moon comes, and it will come. And every time on this full moon day, the message will be the message of the day. And this is the significance of observing this day year after year, so that every year one finds the message is the message of today. It's not an old message of old times. No, it's the message of today. It's the message of full moon, the message of fullness of life. This is the significance of this day, and this will remain year after year. The full moon on this day will come to remind us that this message of fullness of life is the message of today. And then it will continue for this year till the full moon comes again to say, this is the message of today. This brings this message of eternity to the limitations of time, so that every time will have the message as a fresh message of that time. It's a beautiful tradition of observance. We observe the day, and today we had that silence. It was so fortunate. Today we had that silence in which Gurudev's personality was structured, in which that absolute phase of life is structured, in that fullness in which the structure of the moon today is structured. So the whole thing now remains in union with us. The whole principle, the whole message, the whole yearly historical sequence of this fullness of life and this message, the whole thing now today is very, very intimate to our life. It happened to be that way, Thursday and full moon. It's a beautiful thing. The whole occasion is just symbolic to Gurudev and his life.